Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being with us. My name is Dawn Suni. I'm the Cultural Affairs Officer with the U.S. Embassy, and we are very pleased to host this event this evening in collaboration with SLASCOM. Our format for this evening will be in two parts. We will start with a web chat, which is delivered from the U.S. with quite a few distinguished panelists in the field of entrepreneurship and crowdfunding. We will then move into the local discussion with our panel of very distinguished local experts, where we'll be able to really take the dialogue to the local level and talk about the situation with crowdfunding here. You can tweet questions during the web chat for them to take from Washington. We generally see that they'll take, 2 or 3 from Sri Lanka. This is a global web chat, and so you're kind of competing with thousands of people around the world to get your question in, but we encourage you to tweet questions, and they'll give the hashtag up front for that. I believe they're going to get started in just a minute, so I will wait for the signal, but in the meantime, I will begin with introducing our panel this evening. I'd like first to introduce Imran Furkan. He is currently the Executive Director for SLASCOM, also an independent non-executive director of the Trade, Finance and Investments PLC. He holds an MBA from Edith Cowan University of Australia. He's an associate member of the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants of UK and a Chartered Global Management Accountant. Serves on the Export Development Board Advisory Committees on Market Development. Also a member of the Director Training Committee and the Media and Public Relations Committees of the Sri Lanka Institute of Directors. And perhaps most impressive, he was a member of the inaugural 40 Under 40 list of business leaders published by Echelon magazine. And so we welcome Imran with us tonight. And I'll continue. I may stop in the middle of our introductions if the web chat begins. Next, I'd like to thank Rohan Jayawira for being with us this evening. He is a Sri Lanka country consultant for Google Asia Pacific. Rohan is the first employee appointed by Google for Sri Lanka. Previously, he was based out of Singapore as a business consultant. Prior to that, he worked for Cisco, Lenovo, and IBM. He has a BS in Electronic and Telecommunication from University of Moratuwa, an MBA in International Business from Australia, a professional postgrad diploma in marketing from the UK, and if that's not enough, he's currently working on a second master's in business and technology. Very passionate about entrepreneurship and does regular lectures at universities. Had the distinguished honor of being a speaker at the inaugural TEDx in Sri Lanka on entrepreneurship. And in his free time, he set up his own business here 5 years ago, and it's running strong. I will introduce our next panelist, Dilip Hera, entrepreneur and web technology specialist, founder and CEO of Sri Lanka's largest e-commerce organization. Perhaps you've heard of it, Kapruka.com. I heard of that even before I came to Sri Lanka. That's how big it is. He set the bar for Sri Lanka's online business strategies and web-based benchmarks. Is very good at fusing the innovation and new technology-based business models in Sri Lanka, and is an advocate for improving government policies on tech startups and intellectual properties. So thank you for being with us this evening. Our next panelist is Hariharan Padmanabhan, hope I got that, Business Development Manager for Orion City. Brings with him over 14 years of experience in managing and consulting across IT, including business process services and building offshore operations. Currently Global Business Development Manager for Orion, which is, of course, the first technology park in Sri Lanka, catering to some of the largest IT and BPO global entities located in Sri Lanka. He has extensive experience in the services globalization marketplace, having advised customers in the US, UK, and Asian regions. He's been part of the transitions and program governance for customer service operations for GE Capital International Services, HSBC, and back office processing centers for ACE, Astron BPO, and insurance services for WPA UK. Thank you again for being with us. And we also would like to thank Sanath Fernando, CEO of Ridgecrest Asia. Sanath co-founded Ridgecrest Financial in the US and serves as CEO of Ridgecrest. Holds a bachelor's and a master's in electrical engineering from the University of Pennsylvania. I'm from Pennsylvania, good choice. A BS in Econ and Finance, also from University of Pennsylvania. His career spans over 19 years, 13 of which was in the securities industry, where he held several high-profile positions, such as Managing Director of Schwab Soundview Capital Markets, Vice President of Epoch Partners, and Principal of Bank of America Securities. At Schwab Soundview, he ran the Program Trading Technology Group, giving the trading desk the ability to differentiate itself with technology, and the technology team for the program trading business at Bank of America Securities. At Epoch, he ran the Trading Technology Organization, building an equity trading platform on a shoestring budget and spinning off a trading technology startup. At the start of his securities career, Sanath developed quantitative trading systems at Susquehanna International Group, and prior to that worked as an engineer at a small embedded system company. So I think we have a tremendous amount of expertise in the room with us today. I look forward to the conversation. This web chat that we're offering is actually part of a series. You'll see GIST TechConnect. We've offered several of them at the American Center, located on Gall Road. You'll find on your seats tonight a few handouts that have information about the American Center, about the computer resources available there, and some information about crowdfunding. There will also be future web chats in this series, and the prior ones are all available online for viewing if you're interested, and you can get with me after if you need instructions. Are we started? Well, it looks like they're a little delayed starting out of Washington, and so maybe we can invite Imran to come up with initial remarks, and then we may go ahead and, there we go.
TechConnect, a webcast of entrepreneurship and innovation topics. TechConnect is part of the State Department's Global Innovation through Science and Technology initiative called GIST. My name is Ambassador David Thorne, and I'm Senior Advisor to Secretary of State John Kerry at the State Department. Together with Secretary Kerry, I am leading a department-wide effort to position economic and commercial issues more prominently within the U.S. foreign policy landscape. I am working to elevate the importance of entrepreneurship, technology, and innovation in the State Department's promotion of global prosperity. Innovation and entrepreneurship are key components of promoting prosperity around the world. In particular, science and technology innovation leads to new products and companies that fuel economic growth, create jobs, and address important development challenges in agriculture, energy, healthcare, and other sectors. The State Department is empowering a new generation of global science and technology entrepreneurs through skills building, helping small businesses grow, and supporting innovation. Through the GIST initiative, our goal is to unite the power of young people with the power of science and technology, to equip young people to be agents of innovative change and economic development around the world. Through a range of activities like competitions, boot camps, and TechConnects like this one, GIST provides innovators with the tools and confidence they need to launch and develop science and technology startups that can change the world. The GIST network extends globally and includes over 220,000 entrepreneurs. GIST works with the U.S. and local experts to ensure that participants have the support that they need to help take their ideas and innovations to the marketplace. We believe innovation has no borders, and that when you're free to have your own ideas and pursue your own dreams, it means more prosperity and progress for us all. I encourage you to join the GIST community. Innovative entrepreneurs like you are the catalyst for solving challenges both local and global. I'm honored to support your creativity and persistence. And I sincerely want to thank our TechConnect panel of experts for joining us today to share their experiences and answer your questions. And I'm now pleased to introduce today's moderator.
Thank you, Ambassador Thorne. We are very excited to welcome our viewers to today Global Innovation through Science and Technology, also known as GIST, TechConnect Global Conversation for Crowdfunding Your Startup Venture. We have an incredibly knowledgeable and dynamic panel with us today to answer some of your burning questions about how to crowdfund your startup venture and the development of the crowdfunding movement in the US and in general globally. Our speakers will also share with us their thoughts on how to effectively build your crowdfunding campaign as an entrepreneur and how to leverage your social network to build support, timely support for your own campaign and attract the funding needed. I'm Ovidiu Bujoran and I'm the lead for the GIST initiative at CRDF Global. We're very proud to partner with the State Department on this initiative that empowers youth around the world to turn their science and technology ideas into viable ventures that catalyze economic growth. CRDF Global as an organization has been proudly supporting technology entrepreneurs in more than 60 countries for more than 15 years. Our programs are very centered on the entrepreneur, on fostering their efforts of the tech entrepreneurs globally through very practical training such as this one that we are doing today, in-depth mentorship by connections with very experienced practitioners, and as well as access to networks, capital and global expertise, especially from US but also from other countries around the world. Today GIST is thrilled to host virtual Connex web chat, and we're very thankful to our hosts here. That connects entrepreneurs and innovators across geographies through the power of technology. So when we designed TechConnect, we thought, what can we do to bridge these worlds where US has a lot of experience in entrepreneurship, especially tech entrepreneurship, with opportunities from the emerging markets. In our TechConnect so far, we had more than 8,000 viewers from more than 33 countries across the globe, all continents involved. This level of outreach is possible and was possible because of the partnership between the US State Department, CRDF Global, and a lot of numerous local partners that are actually organizing viewing sites right now. We have them listed on our website. We're very thankful for your support all around the world. And I would like to encourage our audience to use the hashtag @GISTTechConnect when tweeting about the event today. It's very important that you share the lessons and the key insights from this program as broadly as possible with your network, so more people benefit from this knowledge. We are also collecting, as usual, questions to ask our panelists later in the program, so you're most welcome to start sending us questions right away and throughout the program by typing in the chat space below the video. For this specific GIST TechConnect, we have extended the duration based on the interest from our viewing sites and our audience to 75 minutes to allow for more questions to be answered. And after the program, also a new element, our speakers will answer a few more questions directly in the web chat. With us in the studio, getting down to business, we have Jason Best, who is the co-founder of Crowdfund Capital Advisors. He has co-founded two leading crowdfunding associations, the Crowdfunding Professional Association, CFPA, and the Crowdfunding Intermediary Regulatory Advocates, CFIRA. You've got me on the spelling here, almost missed this one. In his current position, he works with professional investors, governments, development organizations, professional services, firms, and entrepreneurs globally to create the necessary policy and business strategies to fully leverage the power of crowdfunding investing. Also, Jason is an author, and he authored a great book, which is Crowdfunding Investing. You're most welcome to check it online. I think it provides a lot of the substance behind the crowdfunding movement globally. It's a great book. And next, We have Luan Cox. She is co-founder and CEO of Crowdfunding. She is a founding member of the Crowdfunding Professional Association, CFPA, mentioned before, the Crowdfunding Accreditation for Platform Standards, and the Crowdfunding Intermediary Advocate, CFIRA. She's also very proud alumni of the Elite Springboard Accelerator Program, the class of 2013, comprised of world's leading women-led media and technology company. We have with us, and we're very glad to have Karen Kerrigan, a force in crowdfunding movement. She's president and CEO of Small Business and Entrepreneurship Council. She has been called America's entrepreneurial envoy and small business ambassador for her extensive work overseas. She's also a founding member of the World Entrepreneurship Forum and a board member and former chair of the Center for International Private Enterprise, CIP. She was recently named the top power woman in the US crowdfunding by the CEO World. We did our research by CEO World magazine, and she has been instrumental actually in moving, building the foundation for the crowdfunding movement in US that led to actually to the development of this movement globally, and we'll talk about this when we get to questions. It's my pleasure also to welcome virtually from Cairo, Egypt. It's great to have the voice of our entrepreneurs in the program. Amr Saleh, he's co-founder and CEO of Integrate. He developed novel products for the electronic hobbyist and education market. Amr worked with a team to raise more than $85,000 through a crowdfunding campaign on Kickstarter, raising 850% more than its targeted reach. And I know that this is one of the criteria where you judge the success of the campaigns. As we wait for your questions to come in, I'd like to start off by asking each one of our speakers a number of questions. Let's start with Karen. The entire crowdfunding movement, it took a lot of effort initially to convince people in US to support the legislation required to even allow for this to happen. I think a fundamental issue that we see both in US and in other, not in US as well, but also in other parts of the world even more acutely, is the lack of funding, the lack of access to funding, especially for the early stage entrepreneurs, idea and early stage entrepreneurs. So we see a lot of entrepreneurs globally getting creative in terms of like what they can do. They bootstrap, they go through getting customers, they try a lot of efforts to actually power up their initiative, and also our women entrepreneurs in particular. I think if you can share with us a little bit of the initial thinking on how crowdfunding was thought to kind of help address this need for early funding for the entrepreneurs, and how this was built up in US.
Sure, and hello to everyone, and entrepreneurs globally and those who support entrepreneurs, and thank you so much for inviting me over to this event, and of course the State Department for all they do to support entrepreneurship and economic opportunity abroad. Access to capital, I travel globally, obviously been advocating for entrepreneurs here in the US for close to 20 years. And access to capital has been an enduring challenge, tougher in some economic times than others. But the whole notion of crowdfunding came out of a problem in the marketplace. And I think most particularly following the financial crisis and during the recession that followed, that quite frankly there was a lack of capital for, those who even were successful raising capital, having a very difficult time raising capital. So startup capital, growth capital really did not, it was hard to come by during that period. And so the emergence of crowdfunding, gift and rewards-based crowdfunding, also sort of came out of that period where there was a need in the marketplace for entrepreneurs to access capital. In terms of the next phase, raising equity via crowdfunding and equity or debt via crowdfunding, that idea came from actually entrepreneurs, Jason Best, so I can't take credit for this. Jason Best, he really, and his partner Sherwood Meeks and Zach and other entrepreneurs really were the genesis and put a lot of effort and passion into helping to get the Jumpstart Our Business Startup Act passed, which makes equity and debt-based crowdfunding legal. We had to change an 80-year-old law in order to make equity and debt-based crowdfunding legal. So, essentially, it was easier than we thought it would be too. I mean, but there was a need in the marketplace. There was a political need. Yeah, in Washington, I've been working on stuff for 10 years, and I'm sure, entrepreneurs also around the world, in terms of their advocacy work, it takes a long time. But there was a need in the marketplace. I think there was a very bipartisan support for this. There was an openness to doing something to address this critical need. Members of Congress, the White House were hearing this from entrepreneurs that they access to capital was very, very difficult. So the whole idea of making equity and debt-based crowdfunding legal, again, through platforms, we needed to change the law. It took about a year and a half. I'll leave out all the details. I'll do the Reader's Digest version. But within a year and a half, Jason and Sherwood Niece, his partner, and I, along with Zach, were in the White House where President Obama signed the bill into law. Now we're finishing up over the Securities Exchange Commission some of the rules and regulation, the regulatory framework that's going to govern equity and debt-based crowdfunding. But really, the need in the marketplace, there's a problem in the marketplace, and thankfully, our elected officials responded. So this is going to be really wonderful for entrepreneurs.
I think it's great, and like I mentioned, after it's getting done, it looks easier.
Right.
But I think what's really important is that you saw a vision, you saw a need in the marketplace, and most likely there was also capital available that was not put to good use to powering out new ventures. So I think you found a way to bring those things together, and what's more important, that this sparks conversation globally as well about this.
Yeah, and I think, it made sense, at this period in time for allowing ordinary investors to invest, in the companies that they believe in the entrepreneurs that they believe in their communities, to help with economic development and help to build the capacity of their entrepreneurs in those communities. But so there were some outdated laws that needed to be changed in order to make that happen. And technology, of course, social media has come a long way as well. In terms of allowing for more of the transparency that will be needed, for these types of investment and the investor protection as well. But anyway, so we're just still pushing through the regulations, and they're going to happen soon.
I think it's great, and later on we can chat a little bit about how this would be relevant or applicable for other countries that are actually in the network that may look at setting up those sorts of similar mechanisms, and if there are a few key pointers on how they could go about it,
sure.
Because we have in the audience also people that build entrepreneurial ecosystems locally. One funny aspect is that when I met Sherwood, we were both attending an international event, and I barely was able to get his attention because he was on his BlackBerry checking the status of the passing of the...
Yes, that's right.
He was actually live chatting just to make sure he did the thing, so there were a lot of things in motion here.
Well, I think just, on the final point about this, the power of entrepreneurs to get engaged in the policy-making process and actually in the advocacy, I think was very important in terms of getting this passed. To have, elected officials and policymakers hear from real entrepreneurs, not only about the challenges, but also their solutions, and solutions that make sense for the 21st century. So really, it was very critical to have entrepreneurs involved in this whole process, and thankfully Jason and Sherwood stepped up.
Yeah, I think we will see this in locally happening too. I think that's why it's really useful to learn how this was done in US, because most likely, and we're already seeing examples internationally. So Jason, in addition to the things I mentioned, he also is an entrepreneur himself, of course, and he also raised funding on crowdfunding. So we always attempt in our do the thing yourself. So what I would like to ask you, if you can go a little bit deeper, building on what Karen mentioned on the type of crowdfunding existing right now. Where do you see them existing now, both in US and internationally, very briefly? And then to a certain degree, where do you see the role of crowdfunding in the funding cycle for the entrepreneur?
So there are really three types of crowdfunding. Rewards-based crowdfunding, which is the most common and the largest volume of crowdfunding done today on sites like Kickstarter, where people would exchange a donation or a contribution in exchange for a reward of some kind. For example, if I'm a movie maker, I'm going to give you a DVD of the movie. If I'm a musician or a band, then I would provide you with a free download of the album that I'm making. So very concrete exchange, kind of pre-purchasing inventory. That's typically what happens with businesses. They're using rewards-based sites to pre-purchase inventory in product. It allows you to show product market fit, and it allows you to show customer traction, which follow-on investors want to see. Now, the other types of securities-based crowdfunding that we've helped to create are equity crowdfunding and also debt-based crowdfunding. So the ability for you to have a stock transaction where you would say, I need to raise X amount of dollars to be able to do the following things for my business, and you'll receive stock certificates in exchange for that. The other is a loan. And essentially, just like a small business loan you'd get from a bank, the ability to crowdfund that loan from your community, from your customers, or from other interested parties.
Do you see this, where is the crowdfunding right now? It's like in US and also internationally. From my point of view, I'm constantly getting emails from the different crowdfunding platforms around the world that are being built. Eureka is one in the Middle East that's growing. It's growing right now. And I see different ones, Eastern Europe, different parts of the world. What is the crowdfunding movement right now, both in US and globally?
So in the US, certainly it's the largest market for crowdfunding currently. There's an extremely vibrant market for crowdfinance and crowdfunding in the UK and some other Western European countries, including the Netherlands and Italy. And then globally, looking at rewards-based crowdfunding, we're really beginning to see a lot of sites kick off. There are literally hundreds of crowdfunding platforms around the world that are either live today or spooling up to being live soon. We're seeing them in all regions of the world. We've seen movement, early movement in Europe. There's a strong crowdfunding industry in Latin America. We're also seeing movement in the Middle East and also in Africa and Asia. So it really is a global phenomenon.
Great. One of the things I mentioned, if you can add a little bit more detail, where is the crowdfunding coming into the funding circle? So in terms of you, and also maybe you consider both US entrepreneurs and international entrepreneurs.
So I think one of the challenges in entrepreneurship globally has been this sort of missing step between I've got a great idea and a prototype and where a quote-unquote professional investor is ready to fund my business. And so I think the initial phases of where we're seeing crowdfunding fit are really in that initial phase, allowing me to get from an idea or a concept to a prototype. Or I have a prototype. Now I want to see if there are actually customers who are willing to purchase my product. Because if I can demonstrate to professional investors or even a larger group of crowdfunders that I have a customer for the product, people like it, people are buying it, that means I've got a real business. This is no longer a project, this is actually a business. And so this ability to bridge that gap, to demonstrate this, has really been effective. I think what we'll see moving forward as the crowdfunding becomes more prevalent, more common, is you will also see businesses who return to their crowd over and over again for funding. So it will not just be early stage, the way you see today, but will begin to go into larger and larger rounds of capital. I don't think it replaces angel investors, it doesn't replace venture capital at all. It just provides another avenue to get funding for a business. Because the reality is there are many entrepreneurs who have a business model that may not be exactly right for a traditional angel investment or a venture capital investment. And so this is a new way to be able to access your communities and your customers to be able to, including diaspora communities, to be able to have access to capital.
Great, and actually we have Amr as an example, and we will talk with him in our program. We also have one of our GIST entrepreneurs, Hind Hopeka from Lebanon, that raised 75,000 on Indiegogo. And I think an important element, given the type of work we are doing with the GIST program, and it's directly connected to what Ambassador Thorne mentioned, where you have entrepreneurs on the ground that build new products, new ideas, new ventures. Where do they go actually to attract capital? And we have international entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs that actually were able to attract capital from US to power up their ventures. And Hind, for example, This year, she got the Consumer Electronics Show Innovation Design Award. That's a recognition that innovation can also come from the countries that we are working with, but sometimes the much needed capital to actually build a prototype and get to get the customer base is very critical too. Now we're moving to Luan in the funding circle. The first step is actually attract some of the funds. And as you build your product, you start to get market traction. Where do you go next? So if you could share with us a little bit of your insights about your company, what you're doing. You're an entrepreneur yourself. You are connecting with investors, raising funding, and a lot of the things that our entrepreneurs are going through as well. If you can share with us a little bit about where your company is going into the funding circle and how both entrepreneurs and investors could benefit from this sort of specific service.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me, Toby. So our company, and Karen sort of alluded to it a little bit ago, we're very focused on providing the education and transparency and the distribution required for the investing public to know about these companies. So where we would come in, Crowdfunding has essentially built the data distribution infrastructure, both here in the US and working with partners in Europe. So where we would come in is after you've done your rewards-based campaign and gotten the validation on a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo type site, you've got a prototype build, maybe some customers, then you would move into what we call crowd finance space. And this is where the Jobs Act comes into play, where you're going to actually give either securities in exchange for an investment or for money, and or issue debt, take a loan from the crowd. What we are focused on doing then is aggregating, bringing together all of the information that is available on various portals, both such as AngelList or WeFunder or Crowdfunder or Crowdcube in the UK, bringing all that information together and then making it easily searchable and understandable for normal people, not professional investors. And our first step into that, and we sort of made history with Dow Jones on October 11th of last year, we launched on MarketWatch.com, which is a very large financial media portal, the very first private company content suite. So that 7 million people, all of a sudden, were looking at both public companies like IBM and Apple and doing research, but then also smaller companies as well, and being able to understand where they could invest.
I think it's great. If you could share two follow-on questions. One is basically how some of our entrepreneurs that, as you mentioned, reach a certain stage. They raise funding, they build a prototype, they start to get some market traction. How do you identify those entrepreneurs, or how do they find you? So that actually you provide this sort of visibility into these opportunities to the investors and more broaden the market. And the second question is about what type of investors and what type of investors actually are looking into your platform. Of course, the MarketWatch, you have a very broad distribution, are they more US based, more international? Do you envision that also some of the international investors could be looking at this sort of opportunities and using your platform as a way to kind of identify? Because I know angels from abroad also invest in some companies in US too. So it's interesting to see the dynamics both ways.
Yeah, so in terms of how an entrepreneur or a new issuer, sort of how we refer to them, would find us is they would need to select a portal. Obviously, we're going to talk more about that today, but they need to select a portal from which to do their crowd financing. And we have relationships with most of the prominent portals in the US and UK, and those portals then funnel that information to us, and we become then a distribution mechanism to investors. In terms of what types of investors are looking at this, You're right. It's definitely there's an international component. U.S. International investors looking into U.S. companies and vice versa. But right now we have some regulatory constraints. Title II crowdfunding allows for everyone to invest, for example, regardless of how much money you make or how much you're worth. Today, right now, you're only allowed to invest if you are accredited, which accredited meaning if you make a certain amount of money. So under the Jobs Act, Title II, we are allowed to broadcast these offerings to everyone, but only accredited investors can invest today. And the work that Jason and Karen are doing, working with the SEC, hopefully Title III crowdfunding will help change that.
They are working on this as we speak, so it's the next wave of development. Yeah, good. So I would like to, you mentioned, thank you very much, you mentioned about the different platforms. A few months ago we also interviewed Slava Rubin, who is the founder of Indiegogo, and he mentioned us some of the things they learned from looking at the campaigns, because I would like now to move a little bit deeper into actually what it takes for an entrepreneur to raise funding. The things he mentioned me that they analyzed over 150,000 campaigns on their on Indiegogo, which is the most data of any platform that they know, and they come up with three things on the matter. First of all, number one is having a good pitch, number two is being proactive, and number three is finding an audience that cares. So part of having a good pitch, we know that if you have a video, you will raise 114% more money than if you don't have a video. We know that typically a campaign will hit its target on day 36, on average, of a 47-day long campaign. Number two is to be proactive. We know that if you have a fast start and you raise 25% of your funding within the first week, you are 5 times more likely to hit your target. And finally, it is finding an audience that cares. The way you move from your inner circle, the smaller circle, to a broader audience of strangers, that is when you have a higher activity and action, and that you become more discoverable on Indiegogo. We are getting a lot of questions from our viewers, and I think we'll move straight to the questions from our audience, which is great. Amr is not available via Skype right now, but he'll be available to answer questions after the program on the chat. These are very great insights, I think, to set up the framework for our conversation, and I think we will be moving more into answering more particular questions from our audience on how the specific knowledge that you have could be relevant for our audience. We start with Nadir Lafendi from Algeria. Can you crowdfund on different platforms at the same time? And feel free, any one of you that...
So Nadir, that is possible to do technically. However, it's really best to focus your efforts on one platform. You're really going to be, one of the keys to success about having a successful crowdfunding campaign is you have to start with your friends and family, demonstrate that you have backers who know you well before a campaign will go viral, before a campaign will have broader donors or investors from people that don't know you personally. And so it's really best to focus your efforts in one platform, the one that's right for you. I know we're going to talk more about that later, and then build from there.
Great. The next question is Mirza Bahis Ahmad from Pakistan. How you make it to the front of a crowdfunding website? What are the criteria for that? I mean, we are seeing a lot of campaigns right now, a lot of platforms. How you navigate and how you put yourself in the so you get more attention.
Every platform is different. It's a great question. If anybody here knew that answer, we'd probably make a lot of money. But you know, each platform has different criteria. I think the best advice that we can give is to just try to gain as much support and momentum and speed around. You know, Slava mentioned that the campaigns get funded on average in 36 days. Clearly, a campaign that has a lot of interest in the first couple days will be on the front page. So you just have to keep doing what you normally would do and not depend on trying to get on the home page, because you'll be competing against thousands. At the end of the day, it's your crowd, it's your family, friends, network that's going to crowdfund you, not the website.
I would agree with all that, but also, just having your core network, of support sort of there for you and sort of and pledge, before you launch is very, very critical, so that you start out very successful when you first launch. And you do have that core network that, all this is done before you launch your campaign, before you launch the campaign. Again, that will show that this is a successful campaign, it has traction, and then hopefully that will get you on the front page.
Great. So based on what Slava mentioned, what you all mentioned, I see a number of concentric circles. So basically you start with the inner circle of friends and family that you need to really super activate, and hopefully you also have friends that have broad social networks. So you kind of expand the impact from the get-go, from the initial design. You have the initial buy-in, but at the same time you are looking at how you can leverage, how you can navigate the different social media, so you amplify. So you need to do a lot of preparatory work ahead of actually launching the campaign, because you will actually, like with anything in life, you'll be competing against other entrepreneurs for attention, for the capital, so on and so forth. One other comment, I think if you confirm or not, I think there are also, I see companies starting to be providing a service, how you can get funding on the crowdfunding platforms that will get really good at actually doing these things, preparing the entrepreneur if they have a really good product or ventures, activating, they will have networks in their do you see this also happening?
Yeah, actually, we're very closely partnered with a company that we think is doing a lot of work in this space called Crowdcast and also Crowdfund Academy. And what they're doing, Sally Outlaw runs that company. They're trying to educate people on how to crowdfund, helping them with their video, teaching them how to do social media, and not relying so much again on the website to do the work, because the website won't. So there's a lot of good companies doing work around that.
I think it's a natural evolution of things. Building the entire ecosystem. Ana Gemma Galejo from Spain, how do you engage the public on crowdfunding, and what are some of the specific ways to reach a lot of people?
I think I'll just reinforce the fact that where you want to start is with the people that you know, because the way you get social sharing and the way a campaign becomes viral is when you're able to demonstrate you've got good early traction. How to do that? Number one, you need to have a very disciplined plan and then execute that plan really well. So to start with, before you ever launch publicly on a crowdfunding campaign, on a crowdfunding platform, all of your immediate friends and family, your closest supporters need to know what you're going to do, and need to know they're going to be called upon on a specific day to donate whatever or invest whatever they are going to invest within a certain period of time. Really, those people you can actually call and say, I need you to be a contributor to my campaign in the next 48 hours, and that they'll do it, because you're going to be sitting across the table from them in a few days, maybe at a family meal or at a friend's house. And then you move out to that next concentric circle, the people that you are good friends with, to demonstrate that early traction. Because, like at a good party, no one wants to be first on the dance floor, right? And you have to be able to demonstrate that you've got that traction, that this is a good idea, and other people can be part of that. Once you have that early traction, then it looks like once you can get to 30% of your fundraising goal early, then you're able, that is the tipping point for other people who are not as closely related or closely know you to be willing to invest or to contribute to your campaign. And so the other piece of this, again, from a virality perspective, again, planning. The most important phase of a crowdfunding campaign is before you even launch. So you have a very specific campaign, day by day by day, of the activities you're going to execute in order to be successful.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I mean, that is so important what Jason mentioned. I mean, just again, that core network, and also to have that core network, or even your loyal customers be brand ambassadors, for your campaign as well. To ask them to reach out to their networks. In terms of broad support, broad outreach, one of the things that we found in some of the more successful campaigns, we had a crowdfunding contest and our actual winner used the media very well in terms of letting the public at large know about their campaign. So earned media, contacting reporters, doing talk radio shows, having people do blogs about your effort. Even if you start very targeted, if you're in a certain industry, you can sort of maybe target your media. But that is, if you're media savvy or reach out to reporters or people in the media, they'd be willing to, particularly if you have a compelling story about why you're raising the money, what you need the money for, and
that's great. And I think you guessed the next topic of the TechConnect, which is attracting media attention for your startup.
There we go.
We are in sync. One thing just a brief confirmation on what I'm thinking in terms of getting the buzz, getting the support. To what degree kind of signing up a celebrity or someone that believes in your sort of product could, from the get-go, amplify the potential success of your startup. Do you see this in the...
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, this is marketing. This is
Okay.
marketing.
So I asked an obvious question. The question is which celebrity?
Right. Influential validators.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I think it's a much it's nice to say influential validators, and I think when you design a campaign, it's really important to see who would be this type of influential validators that will have an influence in the potential target audience for this sort of funding campaign.
It needs to be relevant to that. Like that influential validator, that celebrity has to be authentic with their brand. It needs to be aligned with who they are, so they can be passionate and authentic when they're talking about the campaign.
Great. Next, Embassy Armenia. We have a good number of viewing sites with the embassies. Thank you all for your support. How important is it to have your startup operational before you start raising money through crowdfunding?
I think that there are campaigns that begin with a concept or an idea. Typically, we see more success with campaigns that already have a prototype that they can at least demonstrate through their video and talk about very passionately and have potential customers speak to. So that having that prototype or having at least a couple of early customers, I think gives you a better chance for success.
That's great.
And it also depends on what stage, again, you are in your crowdfunding life.
Yes.
But in terms of the persuasion element, that's what also Slava mentioned. It is critical to have a video component that maybe can communicate in a very succinct manner what is the story behind, what is the product, how do you plan to address it in a way that connects with the audience. Maybe better than if you have just like a print version or a text, right? So, yeah. Okay, we have a question we have also Amr on the phone with us. Welcome, Amr. How are you doing?
Hi, Video. I'm all good. I'm sorry, I apologize for the misconnection and disconnection that happened here.
No problem. Thank you for being with us. We're very glad to have you with us, and would be great to learn from your perspective. You've been very successfully attracted capital, crowdfunding capital on Kickstarter, and you kind of went 850% over your initial target, which is a very clear indicator of success on the crowdfunding platforms. If you could share with your audience that is very international in nature, global in nature, what are some of the key things that you have done? If you could link it to some of the things that our speakers in the studio mentioned, what some of the things that worked, some of the things that did not work that you could share with our entrepreneurs?
Okay, well, first off, when doing crowdfunding, you have to search for the most suitable crowdfunding website you will launch on. Some people launch on their own websites, and some use the already existing crowdfunding platforms because they already have the audience, they already have the history of doing a lot of successful crowdfunding campaigns, so the backers can trust them. And in our case, we chose Kickstarter because our product was it's a very big label product. Its target market is very niche, and we were targeting the U.S. market specifically. So that now is all the options into two, which are Kickstarter and Indiegogo. The open group gives some flexible options like getting the flexible funding. I mean, not all or nothing like Kickstarter, and maybe it takes a less percentage. It's open for any project created from any country. But when we decided to go for Kickstarter, it's because the number of related tech projects that were done before on Kickstarter were much higher than that on Indiegogo. So we submitted first Kickstarter. It was very tough for us. It was very intensive to plan for the campaign before it starts. And one of we read almost more than 75 case studies about successful and failure projects that went on Kickstarter before. And the most important part was this, is that when someone does a crowdfunding campaign, he expects that when I put my project on Kickstarter, the pledges will go on instantly. No,
the switch at the bottom. We wish it was that easy.
That is a very big misconception, because you have to get the charge before even getting on the crowdfunding website or the platform. So what we did is we launched in an event nearly 3 weeks before the campaign. We launched the product, and some of the big blogs wrote about it, like TechCrunch and Hackaday, and that gave us like a wide base of email subscriptions for the product itself, so that we notify them once we launch. And this was maybe the major issue that got the campaign to be funded in only less than 6 hours.
Oh, amazing. It's great to hear this, the validation of some of the points that our speakers here mentioned about. But it was really critical, your point about how do you go about choosing the right platform to start with. First of all, looking at the number of potential investors or people that could put in money in your venture, but also the type of campaigns and the type of audience that you are looking at. Okay, that's great to know. What other key insights that you learned actually after you launched? How did you go? We mentioned here about starting with an inner circle and then going beyond that. You mentioned like being picked up by some of the blogs, reputable blogs, which is great. What are the things you have done to actually go beyond the inner core group of supporters, which is also critical to build, but I think it's also critical once you reach that initial goal of what we mentioned, 25-30% of the funding, how do you move beyond that?
Yeah, okay. So the important thing before launching is to well present your product and well present yourself, because these people are going to give you money that and these people don't know you, don't know even who you are, what is your previous experience. So you have to design everything to fulfill all questions that are asked by backers. Like what is your technical experience? Are you capable of getting this product? You have to represent yourself in a video. We made a very good video, but it only had one disadvantage, is that it was 5 minutes. And so you have to keep your video less than 3 minutes or such. It won't exceed the 3 minutes. That's a good video. You have to be responsive, extremely responsive. Any message, any comment, you have to reply as soon as possible, because these guys, the backers need direct communication with you all along the campaign itself. You have to answer questions, you have to be transparent, and you have to, of course, plan well on your timeline before you promise, or so that you don't overpromise what you say. Like if I'm going to deliver the product after 2 months, it's not realistic. You have to test and you have to deliver it right. And this is the biggest challenge we're facing right now. We are doing our best to fulfill the rewards to the backers within the timeline.
Great. I think from what I'm reading is actually you need a compelling story to sell initially to your core group of friends and family then, but for the next level, you need to show the ability to execute, your capacity of actually taking a prototype and moving to the next phases. So even the communication within that video most likely would differ a little bit, while still having elements of the story. you move actually to your ability to execute and implement, because you are handling an audience that doesn't know you that well. So you have to both sell yourself and the team as well in the process. If we will move now to more questions from the audience. For Luan, Jehan from Pakistan, what kind of startups are more suitable for crowdfunding? Is it for everyone?
That's a great question, Jehan, and I know Karen and Jason could answer it just as well as I. No, not all startups are necessarily fit for crowdfunding. When I talk about crowdfunding, I'm talking about crowdfunding for securities or crowd finance, not necessarily just rewards based. It depends on the type of company you are. Consumer-based companies typically do very well, and then you have a product, whether it's a watch or some wearable technology, these obviously do very well. Where there's a broad appeal and you're trying to sell something to individuals, these companies tend to do well in the crowdfunding world. If you're a biotechnology company that needs at some point, $1 billion, probably crowdfunding is not a good place to start. Okay. Feel free to chime in.
I happen to think that if you're solving a solution in the marketplace, and if you can articulate that, to the crowd, and if you're targeting your efforts and going to the right crowd, then anyone can raise money via crowdfunding. But certainly, you do have to you have to have your act together, as Amar said. You have to have the whole package. You have to be meeting the need in the marketplace. You have to be solving a solution in the marketplace. And also, if you are a biotechnology company, for example, you may not go to the broader crowd, but there may be a site developing just for you. So I think there is targeting involved here, and also when I think of successful crowdfunders, I also think of attributes of successful entrepreneurs. You know what I mean? You have to have those attributes and strengths that are going to make you successful entrepreneur, are going to make you a successful crowdfunder as well. So you do have to, I think, display, the credibility, the confidence, the great communication skills, all those types of things going to allow you to successfully crowdfund.
What Amin was mentioning, as a fun fact, Slava mentioned me that actually on the existing top crowdfunding platforms, people are raising funding to launch new crowdfunding platforms.
I'm surprised he's allowing that to happen.
It's like a healthy competition. For Jason, question from Karachi, Pakistan. We have a very good community, just community in Pakistan. Apart from the US, how many other countries have passed the legislation to make crowdfunding legal? And what are the global trends for crowdfunding? Where do you see this going?
So there are just a handful of countries to date that have passed legislation for allowing securities-based crowdfunding. The UK, Italy, Netherlands, the US, a few other countries, Australia, of course, has had crowdfunding for the securities-based crowdfunding for the longest period of time. Mm-hmm. And so there are a number of countries. I think that if we're looking at how entrepreneurs can help move this forward, because certainly we've now worked in 25 countries on 6 continents, and so we've met with a number of entrepreneurs, with government officials, with multilateral organizations, securities regulators, and hearing their challenges. And many of them are the same conversations or similar conversations that we had here in the US. And really it comes down to 3 things. How are you going to protect investors? How are you actually going to deliver capital to the right entrepreneurs? And how do you provide regulatory oversight for the securities regulators? Because one of the things that we did was to say, we want this to be a regulated industry because we want to make sure that it's a vibrant and stable industry, which is the only kind of industry for crowdfunding that's going to make it successful long term. And so the things that are, just a couple of quick keys on making a legal change, and I think that these are universal. Number 1, everyone knows the challenges. What you need to do is come up with a creative solution to those problems. What we did was we came to Washington and we began working with Karen. We had a framework that we created. We took the current law that was written 80 years ago, and we wrote what we believe was a rational update, a 10-point framework of how we could modernize those securities regulations about how to use social media to raise capital on the web. And then we began working with government officials. The power of showing up is key number 2. The ability to actually go and meet face-to-face with regulators, with legislators, with people in the ministries of finance, ministries of commerce, ministries of the treasury, to be able to demonstrate who you are, why you believe this so passionately, and frankly, the fact that these initiatives cost the government nearly $0. And so creating a solution that you can deliver to a government official that you're not asking for any money, you're just asking for the opportunity to work hard.
We have a question for Karen, and after I have another question for Amr. So for Karen Erbil from Iraq, why is reward-based funding more popular than the other crowdfunding models? And also, is government support required for a successful crowdfunding campaign?
What we're going to do is start transitioning the discussion to the local discussion. I think we've gotten lots of good topics here to talk about, and I already know that a few of them relate very well to the discussion tonight. So I'll turn the mic over to Imran.
Thanks, Don. What I have done is we throw together a couple of slides. I think you can watch the live feed. It'll end in about 15 minutes, and there's replay on the site. So what we can do is we've thrown together a couple of slides on the whole crowdfunding, a bit more at a lower level than the kind of macro level discussion we saw from Washington. So to give you a kind of idea of, we go to the presentation. Yeah, so it looks at the concept and also it explains the kind of global scenario and how you can look at Sri Lanka, plugging into that, and also if you are looking at a campaign a bit more in terms of how we can tap into it. So I think basics are to be understood. You're not going to get a lot of money from an individual investor. That's something you need to remember. And when you go down later in the slides, you'll see they give you a rough breakdown of how much you can realistically expect from one person. So looking at a very small contribution from a large group, and also if you really the power is that you are not dependent on one individual, and there are no their own agendas, preferences, and so on. As long as you can appeal to a large group, you can raise a lot of money without really focusing on one particular individual. The catch, of course, is you need to get a lot of people signed on. So there are 4, the panelists refer to 3 kinds of platforms. But if you look at Masalujan is one of the leading think tanks on this whole thing. Apparently there are 4. So you get equity-based crowdfunding where there is a stake involved in return for the funding that is being channeled. Lending, this is where the most kind of problems there are, because there are legal aspects that need to be addressed. Reward-based funding where it's very straightforward. So you get a product or prototype in return, or a service in return for the kind of money you get. And there's this donation-based thing where for good causes, just get the money. Period. There is no accountability in terms of how you do that. So you're looking at equity and lending-based funding is very good for things like things that you can commercialize on a long-term basis. So you're looking at things like software, film, music, etc., where you can you can give equity in return for what you produce, and that's the kind of funding that we get most of the money from. Reward-based things are good. You want to protect the environment. You have a turtle hatchery that you want to set up. That kind of funding can happen in the donation and reward-based funding. We've looked at we also need to understand you're going to raise money on a website, right? It's called a crowdfunding platform, and you need to understand how they are going to make their money. See how much of the money you're going to get to yourself. Right, so there are about 450 platforms around the world that are in the game, and as we heard, there are people raising money on platforms to set up new platforms as well. That's also a nice business model. However, you need to be careful when you select your platform to make sure that it's not one that charges a large part for admin and very little for yourself. Right? Yeah. So there are a lot of platforms that you can look at. There's Kickstarter that everybody's talking about. There's another one called Kiva, which is microfinance kind of thing. Indiegogo is very good for anything. You know, they are not very specific on what they want to do. I'll leave the presentation with consent, and you can check out some of these sites. There's a lot of these. You can just run through them. These are some of the more famous ones. There are about 4 styles of these, which you can then go into and find out as well. Yeah, just a few of these in detail for you to understand. So Kiva is a very small site that looks at average loan. It's a loan-based. It's a microfinance kind of thing, right? So you can get an average of around $300-400 on this, and with all good microfinance schemes, they've got their money back, right? So the money can be rolled again and again and again. It's in about 221 countries, and there are about 1.2 million users, and they've made quite a lot of money in terms of funding as well. So this is a loan-based platform. GoFundMe has a lot. Obviously, they keep a lot more right for themselves. They have to be very careful in terms of what they do. The good thing is they are mainly they even help you get through things like a wedding that you would like to do, a graduation that you would like to do. Maybe you don't have the money now, but you can pull it off. This is good for Sri Lanka. People throw lavish weddings with money they don't have. But obviously, maybe they like maybe you suffered, you had an accident or illness, right? So crowdfunding is not always for things like a business startup. Could be for a life event, right? It's all about the story that you weave. The rock post is again, charges about 5%. It's all or nothing approach. So either you raise all the funding, or you don't get anything, and they insist that you have a video kind of raise of funding as well. Somalin is debt, right? So what they do is they make sure that those who have who give the money have a way of tracing the people who get their money. And they go up to the level of GPS locators to kind of find you and make sure that you use your money very well. So it's a very serious business in terms of people who do it. These are mainly for startups, right? For companies that are startup, and also these are going to be governed by US law, and obviously there are some other laws in other countries as well. We're not experts on this, but what I would like you to understand is there are different platforms for different things. The number one key thing about raising funding on this is to identify the platform that most aligns with what you're trying to achieve. Right? If not, you will never get to the kind of visibility on these platforms that you need. Kickstarter is one of the most famous ones. They made about $300 million or more. It's such a big platform that you can actually get some of the bigger funding. Because it's one of the better known sites, and obviously because it's a bigger site, it also you can locate the kind of projects you want in Asia, Africa. Some people are very keen on investing in Africa. Some people are very keen in South Asia, particularly those with the diasporic connection. So this is where you can really look at this as well. So we've looked at about it's growing very fast. You can see the exponential growth in terms of platforms. Right? That's a positive sign. It also means that the industry has bit of a sustainable future going forward. If you look at funding volumes, this is something you need to look at as well, right? So a large majority, as was mentioned in the web chat, is on reward-based funding and equity-based funding. The reason is it's very there's a very good regulatory framework around it, and you have some control by having an equity-based framework. It's also the oldest. Lending is coming up. Obviously, donation-based funds are not much in terms of growth because it's there are so many other ways you can donate as opposed to doing crowdfunding platform. This is very important for us. Where is this located? Because see, one of the ways we're going to get money is from people who know us. Right? So you have to look at where Sri Lankan diaspora are and see whether the crowdfunding in that area is growing, so that you can attract some funding. So you have a large crowdfunding base in the US. We don't have that many Sri Lankans in the US, so that's one thing you need to remember. But Australia and Europe are areas where you have a lot of Sri Lankan diaspora, right? We talk about Italy, I heard Italy being mentioned. There's a large Sri Lankan diaspora over there, Germany, France, UK, Australia, New Zealand also. A little bit in India happening as well. Even within Europe, you can see the kind of countries you're looking at, UK, Portugal, a lot of connections to Sri Lanka as well. Not much in Africa. There's a very good base happening in Brazil and South America. There aren't many Sri Lankans in that part of the world. So if you're looking at targeting, you need to look at Australia, New Zealand, Europe, and a little bit of North America as well. So I think you can look at the growth in the kind of categories, and obviously reward base has been growing very fast and is the largest as well. Yeah, so they've gone through about 1 million successful campaigns, which is a massive milestone for the crowdfunding industry. It means that campaigns are ongoing and have become mainstay in terms of raising funds as well. Yeah, so what are the kind of amounts you can target? If you look at for equity-based funding, a majority of the funding is between $50,000 and $100,000. When we say $50,000 and $100,000, we're talking about total amount, right? Not individual donations. Majority is between $50,000 to $100,000. You might get a little bit more to $100,000 to $150,000. Which you're not really going to make a lot of money in very small campaigns, nor are you going to make much money in big campaigns. Right? So people are not going to take equity stake in your company for a small amount. You need to look at somewhere between $50,000 to $250,000. That's where the majority of the money you're going to get in terms of campaign leads. For other categories, donation based, obviously, you're giving away money for free. There you're going to see a lot more money come from smaller amounts, right? And very little from anything more than $10,000. So always remember that when you do. Average crowdfunding campaigns, you heard about 36 days. So we are looking at for 7 to 8 weeks. About say 5 to 6 weeks for Indiegogo. But what they've seen is that most of these campaigns take at least if you're looking at something like most campaigns take about 9 weeks for completion. The website says here's where you need to get most of your funding up front. Yeah, I mean there are challenges with crowdfunding. Number one is that there are a lot of people because it's a regulatory environment not very good. They do a very nice video and then the money disappears. Right? So there is no way to really track funding, particularly if funding comes from overseas. The danger for the crowdfunding industry is that there are people who have half-baked ideas, right? And what they do is they do raise money, and then investors get very scared because the project is not happening, and then you see the traditional media pick up on one or two bad stories, and the entire crowdfunding industry is getting bad, very bad press because of that. There were a couple of examples of people who want to do movies, right? Raise a lot of money and fail to deliver the movie, and there was a lot of bad press on that. Obviously, there are huge issues in terms of things like intellectual property. Right? You put your idea on crowdfunding platforms. Obviously, the US is working on it, and hamper crowdfunding in Sri Lanka is the issue of PayPal not being able to, you being unable to remit money into Sri Lanka through PayPal. And one of the reasons is, I will address the issue later, but one of the issues, main issues really that has hampered crowdfunding in Sri Lanka is the inability to really get the money from secure platforms. Right? Yeah, and obviously now we've seen, due to all the kind of pressures that have come through, some of these main platforms are putting in stricter and stricter requirements in terms of raising funds. So you will start with the bigger, more established funds like Kickstarter. They've added a new section where you have to outline the kind of risks and challenges in your project. You have to give detailed graphics, sketches, and drawings. And obviously, it also stops you raising, different amounts of money for the same project on the same platform. Right, so you have one campaign, either you succeed in that campaign or you fail. how do you do this? Well, you need to make sure that you have very good pitch, right? You need to have authentic, clear, and precise story. Don't assume that your audience are experts, right? These are ordinary people contributing a small amount of money on a project they have no clue about. So you need to tell them everything you can in terms of, even to a very basic level, what you are going to put your money in, or what you are going to take their money to put in. You need to choose your audience. This is where your crowdfunding platform is very important. You've got this handout from the Medical Center. On the other side of it, you get a list of some of the more prominent, some of the more prominent platforms, right? So if you want, now Sri Lankans are getting huge on mobile apps, so you can go to App Tracker for that. If you have a weird project you need to look at, you can go to Indiegogo. Obviously, if you want to, look at microfinance, you can go to Kiva and so on. So you need to pick your platform. Number one key issue is pick the correct platform. Right? If you don't pick the correct platform, you're going to have an issue in terms of where you're going to go. You need to, people can trust if they see something you've already done. So, for example, say you have an orphanage that you want to raise funding for, show them the work that it's already doing. Right? Photographs, testimonials. I have a video from one local campaign, but I'm not sure if it's working on the project. Let's see whether we can. You need to show them what you already have achieved, and then show them where you want to get there. Okay. So why hasn't crowdfunding not taken off in Sri Lanka? Number one reason that everybody keeps asking that. Research has shown that 63% of crowdfunding platforms use PayPal as a method to remit the funding. And obviously PayPal is not allowed in Sri Lanka in terms of inward remittance. Obviously, though outward remittance is famous for individual purchases through PayPal is allowed. Bit of an ironic situation. You also need to link PayPal with freely with a domestic bank account. That is where we are having a small problem as well. Now, why has it not happened? I actually gave a couple of calls this morning before I came in. So, I know some Sri Lankans have written to PayPal saying come. And they've sent the standard letter saying we are delighted to come to Sri Lanka, but we have not got permission. The reality of what I have understood is that it's not exactly correct. I have been told that PayPal is also doing an evaluation of the country size, whether it's worthwhile to kind of set up the processes that they need to do whether to come here. They're doing a country risk assessment in terms of the banking industry and kind of how to trace that the money goes to the right people. There are very strict international laws on anti-terrorism financing, and there are very strict laws on money laundering. So they have liabilities that they need to be very careful. Right? US is a very strict market, so they need to make sure that the money goes to the right account with the right person, and make sure that the banking industry checks. So there are a lot of checks and balances happening. And I'm told it could be somewhere from weeks to months, but this is efforts are underway to make sure that this happens. The moment this happens, I'm sure that we will, this will happen, and we are pushing behind the scenes, and pushing all stakeholders to make sure that this happens. Yeah. I think we are done in terms of basic overview. We have a very interesting panel. I don't know how much our knowledge on hardcore crowdfunding is, but let's see whether we can answer as many of your questions as possible, particularly on how to push. Let's see if there are a couple of other examples also. Yes. Shall we start with the CPA one? Yeah, I located a pitch from the Center for Policy Alternatives, very well-known NGO organization in Sri Lanka. They've just put this up on their website. Now, this is not on a crowdfunding platform. Look at how they address this. They give you a brief overview of who they are. They've been around for about 18 years. That gives you confidence. Go down. So they appeal to you. We need your help, right? Then they talk about how small their organization is and why they need your help to get there. They are also if you look, they give you some credibility information that gives you credibility, right? Our senior staff are quoted regularly in mainstream media. So what you do is you Google them, see whether they are legit outfit. Then they give you a whole testimonials from quite a few people who work with them and who talk about how important it is, in terms of support this organization, right? So you can go down, yeah, so there are a lot of testimonials from very reputable people. Then they ask you in terms of the kind of how much you can contribute and how much they want from you. There's a one-off donation, and they give you your bank account and how. So this is one way of bypassing the whole PayPal thing. But this can only work for very reputable organizations, right? It's not going to work for startups because they don't know who you are. They give you how to contact them. So this is put up on the 14th of January this year. I don't think there's been enough time to say that this has been successful. But if you've been around, this could be an opportunity. We've also got a nice video. I don't know whether we can play. It's a small. Let's just try that and see. It's a very nice video. Done by. I don't think the video is. I'm sorry, but I don't think the video. We can get the graphic, but you can get some of the sound. So
get your friends and family support first. They're the people who know you the best. They trust you. They think you're probably pretty.
I think we do. Yeah, you can skip some parts. Skip here. So you can talk to them. So there's a country overview of Sri Lanka that they play, and then they talk about the strength of.
I coordinate the Venice program with the main collaborator. I'm Australian, but my mother was born in Sri Lanka, and over the past 5 years I've been regularly visiting.
It's been difficult to listen to the sound.
The Venice program works with local people in Sri Lanka to identify grassroots approaches to community and arts development. This fundraising campaign asks you to support 3 key projects that we're working on with local agencies. Our aim is to help them to frame, design and deliver these projects.
I'm actually involved in a reconciliation group myself, where I think it's really important that we, try to rebuild and move forward as a nation. So I just really appreciate the art scene and people's creativity, and when those two meet, the amazing ideas and actions that the ideas eventually fuel.
What you can understand is, there are testimonials. There's visuals of the kind of projects we already do, and so on. There's one more that, So there was another program, the Samanalaya one. That is a crowdfunding project that is done by one of these organizations. It looked at, so this project is now completed. They got through the whole bypassing the PayPal plan by having an account overseas, right? So you pay for it overseas, and from there the funding was remitted to Sri Lanka. So you don't necessarily need to have a PayPal account here. There are ways of doing this. I think you need to talk to a good bank or somebody else who can work on this. All this is available on there, so you can go and find out about them a lot more, I think. So that I think is fine for us in terms of basic introduction. We might kind of wish to come over and we can just talk about it.
The entrepreneur is key to anything. If you understand that an idea, by the time that some of these people are really make it, but even those that make it, by the time it gets to a point of success, chances are it has changed dramatically from what the initial idea was. It's called pivoting, and you need the entrepreneurs who are able to pivot, who are able to understand, okay, this is what I was doing initially, and that's not exactly what the market is looking for, change it. And you may have to do that 3-4 times. So you want want the entrepreneur who is one passionate about this, they're going to go and whatever obstacles that come my way, I don't care, I'm going to go make it work. Two, they need to be coachable. The person who is so headstrong, this is the next best thing to slice bread, I don't care what anybody says, chances are they're going to fail. 1 in a million, they might be right, but chances are that they're going to keep at it, but everybody's telling them they're wrong, and they'll have a problem. So those are the great attitude, coachability. We'll look at the entrepreneur, we fund the entrepreneur, and you'll find that most people in the internet will be able to resonate, that idea resonates with them. After that, the idea has to have merit also. And however good the entrepreneur, the idea itself may not be fundable. If that's the case, though, rather than the other way around, a fundable idea with bad entrepreneur, chances are it won't get a great entrepreneur with an idea that's not so great, well, almost always you'll find a bunch of investors saying, you know, I like to work with this person. We'll work with you, tweak the idea, get it to something that's workable. If not, hey, come on, let's do something else. Right? So, we will mentor. The mentoring is a key part with the large angel network. It's not angels globally. The goal is really the returns are secondary almost. And they're trying to find a lot of people. So, I guess the entrepreneur, the idea, and market also. The size of the funding will depend on Sri Lanka. This is a small market. So if you are talking about the Sri Lanka as your market, there's a limit to how much you can do, right? So it depends. If you're doing travel over hill, that's atypical for a startup, but that's fine. But most places we would like them to be looking globally as well. And taking strategic advantage of our geographic location.
Just one question. Actually, you both sat and watched, I think this panel also has watched a lot of pitching contests from a lot of startups. One thing that I noticed is that all of the ideas seem to be something that is already out there. What are the kind of areas you think that you know people have really not got into? You know I mean, it's a question to all the panelists really not just answer. Where are the areas you think that there is some scope for something to be unique and that somebody is not really approached locally at least?
Just a slight counter to that, Imran. We do find people who come up with pretty novel things. It's not me that I'm that. We have one fashion designer who changed again, expected, but she was doing ethical garments out of recycled labels, not just recycled or waste material, the labels. So that's pretty cool. She certainly got it. Now, but that was difficult. You could, how many labels are you going to get? You start getting to Jordan, and now you're going to go around looking for labels. It's not easy. So she changed it to be recycled more than things. So we do have people doing that. Then we had one gentleman who wanted to build power systems based on, he was going to do these funnels in the ocean on top of volcanic, whatever, oh my god. That did as a huge context, that was not a large nature network topic unfortunately, but we do get people who are thinking out of the box and doing it. Going back to the thing you said, yes, the majority of them, to be fair, we are not as advanced as the other places. And looking at something, hey, I can do it better, or I can do a slight variation of them. So that, which I don't think is that bad thing. What could we do? Rather than looking at underrepresented, I would look at what our strategic advantages. So what is Sri Lanka, what can we do with it, right? Geographically, everything's the biggest thing. It's so close to all the economic powerhouses, the population centers. So do things where, how can you do something that everybody in India wants to pay you the rupees a month? That's it, right? I mean, what more do you need? If you can reach a large chunk of Indian consumers who pay you 30 rupees a month, you can. I don't know what the number is, but multiply that, you've got your circle life. Diaspora, huge diaspora. So I think people should take a look at the advantages and try to.
Harry, you meet a lot of foreign investors, diaspora, anyone who's interested in Sri Lanka in some way or the other. What do they identify Sri Lanka with, and if you are a startup, what are the areas you think that they would accept us as having a strategic advantage in? Is it tourism? Is it something else? Where do you think they identify Sri Lanka with from a global perspective?
Okay, I think representing Ryan, I'll start with Ryan itself. Sri Lanka is not known for the technology space. And when you start talking about Ryan City and what, in terms of technology, what happens with it, they're like, sometimes they're taken aback and say, does this really happen? So it's like, I think sometimes you create a kind of a spark in them to say, let's go see what's happening over there. And then you create that momentum to come forward. But what Sri Lanka is already known, it's more in the hotel sector, the tourism sector, so people know Sri Lanka in that space. But it's, I think, picking out what are those aspects that Sri Lanka is not known for. And you will actually get traction in those areas, right? In terms of technology, in terms of the kind of skill sets that we do. And if you look at the kind of companies that are coming up, especially in the technology sector, it's amazing to know the kind of work that they have done globally. And the thing is, nobody talks about these companies, and I think that's where the traction should be. And I'm really happy that, over the past 2 years, you've got Rohan here next to me in Berlin. We've done a lot of stuff. Google is in town at last, and that spreads a lot of word. I mean, it talks a lot about you. Sanat representing the Lankan Asia Network, in terms of getting these budding ideas up to the forefront into the global space, getting people to know that these kind of ideas are coming up. And I think what I've seen over the last 6 to 12 months is the traction within the diaspora, within the different continents. There's a lot of traction, people are coming back to Sri Lanka. I think Lilith is a good case of that, as well as Rohan.
I think it came a long time ago, but
so a long time ago, but there is a momentum happening at this point of time, and it's great to know that. And I, to be honest with you, in the past 2-3 weeks, I've been inundated with diaspora from the US, from Australia, you name it, who are coming to say, look, I'm coming to start up my company in 2-3 seats. Now I'm like going helter-skelter trying to find space to put these guys in, and there's a whole long list of people who want space to start up something. So I think that traction is happening. It's great to know, and now with the session on crowdfunding, it's brilliant to know that people can have access. It's like a one-to-many and many-to-one story, whereby an individual with an idea would have access to finances, as well as the most important thing, getting his product to the right market. Because at the end of the day, it's all the kind of contacts you have, the kind of relationships you build, that would actually take that product to the market at the end of the day. And that's how I think Sri Lanka would come to that.
Rohan, you mentor a lot of people. You've been doing that, I think, before you got to Google. Do you think, Sri Lankans, particularly those in the startup community, do you think they're ready for crowdfunding? Do you think they can pitch, do a good pitch in terms of global audience? Sri Lankans are very reserved in their nature, right? Do you think they're ready? How do you make them ready?
So I'll just tie up 2 questions that you asked previously. So I think I have been in these global startup labs for the 4th year running, and I sometimes again you see these ideas getting repeated, probably the ideas that the same people are making. Challenge I think there is that most of the students are not really getting into where the problem lies, and they just try to analyze issues that are just sitting in a very theoretical manner. And I think people need to go to where problems are existing and trying to find solutions around it. I think that will make a much more better startup environment for us. Maybe Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, traffic situations, and all that. Those are real practical challenges we have. I think most of the time kids get too caught up with all these famous stories you hear every day, and we all want to build this next big technology company, whatever. And I think it's a great aspiration to have, but I think if you really look at the local problems, I think that makes a much more better startup opportunity for the young students. Coming back to that, I think we have a case study of one of the worst marketed countries. I think there are some of the most amazing technology companies exist in Sri Lanka, starting from the London Stock Exchange acquisition of Millennium IT. We are like probably the second biggest company, Coastal Stock Exchange, and all these runs on software written by Sri Lankans. One of the latest ones is WSO2, only the company registered as a visionary in the dark category for the middleware. We make the sensors for GM, Ford, BMW, Porsche, Toyotas, everything in this country. So we have an amazing pedigree of technology leadership, which unfortunately we haven't really done. We are only known for probably tea, and then thanks to Mars and graphics or products. So I think we really need to do this a better job, and I think it's coming back to what you asked me, culturally, we are one of those people, we've been born to be quiet, let people discover us and all that, and I think being a dot in the Indian Ocean, that really doesn't help, and I think we really need to, and we have the right to make a bigger noise about what we are capable of doing, and I think that's the only way we will compete in this space as well. We are a 20 million population, we have a stagnant population, aging population of 31, median age for the, next 5 years. We are competing with very young audiences across hundreds and millions of, next to this is a million population. We really need to make a bit more noise about what we are capable of doing. I think that's a cultural thing. Starts with hopefully we being parents and telling our children to be a little bit more flamboyant and a bit more aggressive around promoting self-promotion, I think. Because our parents didn't say that. Our parents essentially told us, be quiet, listen to elders. I mean, that's a culture we grew up.
Dalit, you were a successful employee in the US when they decided to come back. I think you started before you came back, right? And when you decided to make Sri Lanka back at home. At some point, you have pivoted, as some has said. How do you know when you get to that point? How do you know this is for you? It's a huge risk. You obviously have invested some of your own money, family, external investors. How do you know at that point this is for me, and how do you make sure that you keep going in spite of enormous obstacles? And I know that even after you become successful, you face obstacles recently because people, regulatory framework. How do you keep going, and where do you pivot at what point?
I think in my case, I think after like the first year, I really believed in the product. I mean, it is so important, and I really believed in the service that I was giving. I had so much confidence in that part that everything else kind of falls into place automatically. So that was a key thing. I was not, waiting for I'm going to wait 2 more years and collect enough money to pay to it. And I kind of knew that from the first year onward, this is where it's going to be. And my market is in Sri Lanka. There's no point in being in the United States and remote controlling this. Into 300 employees, and then I just pulled the plug and down here. I was waiting for the data to come back to Sri Lanka. And like all the others said, we are geographically, we have a huge advantage of being in Sri Lanka. There are so many ideas that you don't really need to even invent. You can kind of bring it and you can bring things down. And just like Ron said, there are so many practical problems in Sri Lanka that you can solve and create an industry.
I think we have a live audience and obviously much larger online. So if there are questions, you can take the opportunity to ask this panel, and I'm sure that they will answer as much as they could. Are there any questions from the live audience? This is one question.
Coming back to this crowdsourced funding, have you actually made such an investment, and what was your experience? I'm not talking about donation, I'm a guy who invested in some project, some money down.
I haven't done it yet, but I know a case study of someone who has done it. Actually, that's one of my bosses, and he basically went into one of those schools, and the children were unfortunately not in Sri Lanka, but in Singapore, my boss is, and his children were asking for crowdfunding for some of the ideas, where the parents were supposed to fund different ideas, and that was a very fascinating way of promoting entrepreneurship as well as getting investment and funding done. And I know for a fact that it is Singapore is very big driving this at the moment, and they're doing it very aggressive. Sorry, but I haven't done it personally.
Thought about it, but that's the closest I got. There actually have been some interesting projects on Kickstarter, and I would have done. I haven't, but the only reason I didn't was I was to showcase this exact technology for one card already. One of these things. But I still, just that I've been so busy with other stuff that I didn't really get down to investigating and doing it. But if your question is more towards, would we? I think we will. And if you get if I remember right, there was one of these, one gadget where there was this little device and something like a Dropbox, but with the hardware. Dropbox doesn't have hardware, so you got this little hardware piece that you have, and then you have like infinite storage as a result, always connected. Sounds like a pretty cool idea. That was the closest I think I got to figure out how to do it, but then again, I wasn't sure hardware was the way to go. I was going for the Dropbox model. Why do I need to worry about suddenly that my own piece of hardware that breaks, right? So, but is that's not implementation of the concept, right? I was pretty close to how I've done it, and I probably will participate in some crowdfunding before.
Stuff we were like, there are platforms and platform building platforms and so on. And there are so many of them that seem to be coming up, and so many offers on each of these. I mean, it's going to be almost impossible for somebody to select something to put their money into. Do some research on those projects. A lot of research to find what to put your money on. Unless you have some introduction to somebody's class teacher or something, some project like it where you have an introduction through someone you're connected with already.
But unfortunately, some of the platforms will not be entirely honest either.
Yeah, let me just add something. See, what research has found is a lot of these platforms, projects that have been, funded on these platforms, have been funded from people in the same country for projects in the same country. So there are ways of checking for them. One of the reasons why funding has not happened from Sri Lanka for Sri Lankan projects is because obviously that platform is not available for you to cross-check. Sri Lanka is really easy. You just make a call and you can cross-check. In research in Australia, in UK, it's mainly for projects in their own country, in communities where they live and in which they're connected. Yes,
I just have a feeling now, when you go ahead and invest in the stock exchange, it's a risk that you do at the end of the day. You're spending money on a company that you're not too sure of, you don't know too much, you know a little bit about it, whatever. It's similar to this, but this is more smaller chunks. And what you can do is you will have a small pool of money where you can spread it over a couple of projects. So it's like a gamble you're anyway taking, and just to see how it works out. And if it is equity based or whatever, then it works out better and really happens, then things go forward. Right? So I think that element of risk is always there. You cannot be 101% sure that it will work. 90% may not work, it may be 10% or whatever. So you have to be very careful. You can't be too careful also. You have to promote the cause. If you're interested in the project, you get involved. So I think you have to take that lead first. See how it goes and then move forward from there. Because at the back of your mind, you're helping somebody to create a unique product or service, right? Which is going to help either you in some form. That's why you're interested, right? And not a big global corporate entity. And you're going to bring that person up. So you have to look at it more from a social as well as more from a business perspective as well.
Absolutely. Another thing that struck me was, if the regulation and the confidence is in place, perhaps you could raise your IPO
startups get funding in form of angels and venture capitalists and all that. I think for us, the most exciting thing is the fact that the potential that crowdfunding brings for the distributed access to funding.
It's a what?
Distributed access to funding. And I think that's the most exciting prospect, the crowdfunding model that is there. Of course, it's still very much early stages in this part, so like the US and UK is obviously that part's not much advanced. But I think with a little bit of help from the regulatory environment and the securities, I believe that's a very exciting prospect for anyone to get funding. That's 97% that doesn't get funding from angels or the other venture capitalists.
The way I heard initially about Kickstarters was from a friend who wrote and said she had a project. She was wanting to fund the editing of a book she had written, and she was asking for $1,500. And eventually she made, I think it was $5,500. And therefore she was able to self-publish the book. So that was my first clue about Kickstarters.
Actually, this crowdfunding for books dates back to 1769, where the first few books were published, and you got credit at the beginning and the end of the book, saying funded by list and the amount given. And if Rohan and I are from a particular school close by, and Lilith as well, sorry. Our sports complex got funded by crowdsourcing, right? All the boys. So the concept is not new, right? The concept is been in this country for, I think, generations. It's how it becomes an organized activity. That is, I think, which is not happening as well. Just a question to Lilith, and I will come back to some other questions as well. Lilith, when you were going after funding, what are the kind of questions that were asked from you? And in terms of who you are as a person, about your business idea, about its viability, about the future potential of the country, because you are targeting Sri Lanka as a distribution point to some extent, to a large extent. How do you address those concerns? I mean, we really have a track record in business as such, right? So this was.
In my case, actually, I didn't use funding. Kapur was entirely built organically. Own profits. Today, I have not even talked to banks to get to know. So it was very organically grown for 10 years, and I always believe very strongly in organic growth, at least in the kind of ideas that I know. But the world is moving so fast, you can't really rely on organic growth anymore. Coming back to crowdfunding, I always picture, when you walk into like a casino, you see the slot machines, people paying pennies. That room is always full, right? And then there is blackjack, right? That's like the bed beds. But both rooms are full, so that is the moment. Sorry, I can't answer the question. I haven't done any fundraising myself.
Coming to that same question, how do the people come funding from you? How do they answer their doubters, creditors? What are the kind of how do they instill confidence in people who fund them? Because this is for those who are thinking of how do they address. Do they talk about a market need that needs to be addressed? Are they talking about potential of Sri Lanka? So, those are serious questions. How do you answer someone who asks that from somebody who just has a nice idea? What kind of good answers have you got that you can share?
Ultimately, the first question you asked me, whether somebody is genuine and passionate, it's pretty obvious in how you talk about it, how you present your idea. So that's the biggest part of it. When you find somebody who is genuine and passionate, bubbly, energetic, everybody around that table falls to now. So now the questions are not from the standpoint of this is a dumb idea. It's not going to be. Even if you're thinking, what, you're trying to figure out how can we make it into something that's going to work because we want to be part of it. The angel the concept, global, not just Sri Lanka, the entire concept was born out of people who want to have returns for the secondary. And that is very much the case. So the Lankan Angel Network has funded 180 billion in the last 1.5 years. Projects through that. It's a significant amount for Sri Lanka. And our chairman, Eric, he was at an Indian angel event, and then he found something that was astounding actually, that in terms of participation and a lot of funding, we were incredibly good. Like we were here thinking, okay, we should do more and more. So after like great, wow, compared to global standards, that's pretty good. In terms of how people come and pitch and present, now obviously you're going to be worried about, is my English good enough? Is my idea good enough? These are, I don't have a direct answer. As much as I tell you it doesn't matter, we are here to love and all that, the third person still has those doubts. Guess what you do? You have to, are you convinced of your idea? Are you willing to drop everything and go do it? That's enough. If that's the case, go talk to somebody and you'll find somebody else. Just real quick, I want to focus on a couple of things. Also, what Mohan mentioned about the diversity of funding through crowdsourcing. One of the things you get out of it is that a lot of the crowdsourced funding is from people who would use your product. Venture capital and angels, not to be snobbish or elitist up there, but we had a case where somebody was pitching a budget, lower cost, affordable, because things were getting out of hand. Then there was a comment about, I'm not so sure I would go and stay there. And the immediate answer is, it's not for you to go and stay there. This is a budget hotel. To be fair, you're an angel or a venture capitalist, you have made some money and all this stuff. So there's a validation that comes with that money, not just the money. Now on the other side of it, the angels and VCs, certainly the angel network. Now Tulip mentioned that it's great if you can bootstrap and do things yourself, but also people come not for the funding itself, but for the mentoring, the networks, everything. There's a lot of other things that come along with that. You're going to get professionals, people who are at the top of their fields, going to come and help you out, and they're not going to charge you. You're going to get all that for that free because they have invested in you, and now it's their best interest to make sure that you do it. Right? So back to your original, I'll answer that as succinctly as I can. If you believe in yourself, if you believe in your idea, can't be afraid of being embarrassed or whatever. And I can't allay that fear, but all I can say is encourage. Just come to us. People like you know.
Regarding growth funding, we're talking a lot about new projects, but what about projects that have been around that are struggling with the organic growth, you need an influx of cash. What suggestions do you have as far as the pitch, the angle that you come at? Do you have any?
I'll give this a shot, but what I would see is primarily the customer has also evolved over time. You have a certain product that you started off a couple of years back, you're doing that. Maybe we can take you as an example in terms of photographs and being in that space. But you must have realized that the customer is now demanding more. And there's a certain value addition he expects, not necessarily with price. And therefore, you would need to be more innovative in terms of bringing in all those landscapes onto that particular, onto the table and providing it to him. Now, when he gets that value addition, then he is interested to get into it and then go forward to the next level. He's like, wow, okay, in this space, this is what happens, and I'm interested in investing, why not? Because he sees the future as we go forward. And nowadays, the younger generation is so exposed that they really know what they want. I think Rohan was saying just a couple of minutes back, I mean, that it's not like our parents telling us what to do. Today my 5-year-old daughter tells me what to do, right? So because she's used, I bought an iPad about 3 years back, about a year and a half, and she has been using it. I have not seen the daylight of that, right? So they are so exposed to so many things that they demand it, and they feel that it's their right of way. Where for us we say, look, it's a value addition, we have to do something to make it more this thing. So you have to be innovative, you have to think on your feet in order to ensure that you get that growth funding. Growth funding will only come in when they see value in what you're currently doing, the product. Maybe another good.
I have faced that situation recently. I've grown so much, and now there's this point that I'd like to, just skyrocket. Then you have to pick between, organic, happy growth, or which I think is in that space. One of the biggest challenges is IP in Sri Lanka for me nowadays. Unless you can protect that idea that you have come up with, you're very worried about voicing it out. Putting it out there on the website, putting it out to, imagine the crowdfunding website will be an awesome collection of great ideas to copy off from. So if you have half-baked product, people will run and pick it up and run. So I think in fact I have a solid example where I need to apply for 3 patents for 3 things that we are working on. And until I get those patents, I'm really scared of getting into any kind of growth funding because I don't want to voice it to investors. I don't want to scare about that. So I think, and it's very difficult for technology companies in Sri Lanka to get patents because there are no subject matter experts in certain areas that will understand your idea. It's a slow, long process. So if I have an idea and if I can get a patent for it within months, then I'm done. I know I'm protected. I can go talk about it all day to investors without missing the ball. So I need to promote that research.
Okay, that's a very valid point. See, one of the biggest risks of crowdfunding is that your idea can be stolen. There is, even in the US, there is IP protection for ideas on crowdfunding sites. That's something that the US itself is working on. But then just imagine us trying to put it out there and it works both ways. Basic crowdfunding we implemented, we need to generate a product enthusiasm upfront, but new idea will not necessarily do so, but in the longer term you can raise much more by having a proven concept. Right? You need to then show how we're going to grow and take it. Again, Rohan, Google is one of my companies, but we have 160 or others. I don't really want to promote one company. But there has to be tools out there for startups that are free. Maybe like Google others that you can use. Other than a crowdfunding platform, for your operational purposes. How do you access them? Where do you find them? Look at the audience. But all of us are young. Some of us are, others are not. How do you, in very quick time, access these tools and how you build on these tools?
So I think if you look at the platform, the way I would like to answer your question is that we are more like a platform provider. And most of the stuff that is on this platform you can access, like starting from email services to there's something called Google Sites for someone to just build very plain persons on the site, just a website that just to get the persons. And then we have obviously a social media, social platform called Google Plus. All of these actually kind of give you that free access that is essentially required for it. And on top of that, if you basically, I think the biggest strength we provide is that we allow people to find information that they're looking for. That's obviously our team and our mission statement as well. And then all this platform that is built around, I think we are in a very unique position for us to really promote small and medium-sized businesses that initial services and that is really needed. For example, if you do get Google Apps with your Gmail, you obviously have access to most of the office-related documents, and by a simple modification of the code, you can write even a leave approval format or a payroll kind of a thing, or whatever you want to do, and then for you to be found, Google Maps is available, you can put your placement on the Google Maps. So essentially for a small and medium-sized businesses, whether they are on a technology platform or even on a retail platform, there's so much stuff that is there. However, what we need to do is to put that literacy on to the audience. And that is something we are really working hard in Sri Lanka through our communities like Google Business Groups, Google Developer Map Makers, trying to get these people to be aware. I believe if we just put the information out there, people in Sri Lanka are smart enough to figure out what to do. I think our problem is that we haven't been able to get that information out there fast enough. We are getting there, but we can certainly do way better. And I think we are working on that.
Any more questions from our audience? It's something to Harry. You've seen some members at Orion or some companies that you meet with that are big players. And then you also see some of the smaller players. How different are marketing efforts of these companies internationally and globally? And what are the kind of like good examples that you've seen of small startups, smaller companies that you've dealt with, market themselves innovatively? Particularly this maybe their founder, how he or she has marketed themselves personally, and obviously how have they built the relationship with their company as well. Any examples that you see or any member of organization for that matter?
Right. I'll just give you a before I answer that question, just a synopsis of what has happened at Orion that I've seen within the park. Right? When a new client wants to come in and set up, his first question is, who is going to take my people? That's the first scare they have, right? Okay, if I locate here, I've got the Virtusers, I've got the Pearsons, I've got Sri Lankan, I've got all these guys. That's why Sarat didn't come and locate there. But so the first question is, look, will my people be taken, and where will my business be headed, right? That was the perception that we had to crack in the first phase. And how that happened was, I said, look, what has happened over time, if you look at over the past, I've been there 6-7 years today it's not a matter of competition. It has now gone into a cycle of more collaboration that's happening. So the smaller companies are actually collaborating with the bigger entities. And therefore, there's a lot of growth happening within them. They're able to get the support, they're able to get the kind of manpower they require in terms of skill sets. They're able to push forward their product. So that is happening, right? The next fear I find with the smaller companies is, they struggle literally to get funding to take they have a beautiful idea. They've done everything, they've spent lots of money on marketing, and then they're trying to grow it, right? But marketing efforts take at least a cycle of anything between 18 to 24 months before you actually get results. And it's a bleak time for the company, right? So they have to go through all these. So with the bigger guys there, they're actually able to sort of weather the storm in a certain way, up to a certain extent, because there are people who can help hands-on. There are mentors around who can help you. There are different kinds of professionals. Now tomorrow, if I require a particular skill set, which I don't have, I can equally ask a company, you have somebody in this area who can help me out. So we see a lot of that happening, right? And therefore, I think crowdfunding is something that will help those smaller companies in a much bigger way, especially in their marketing effort, because it gives access to clients without actually, and you get the money as well to sustain that continuous effort. And as I said earlier, it's something. Actually, you can have a very good idea, a brilliant product. If you don't know how to market it and you don't attract the right kind of customers, it's going to sit down the shelf, right? So I think crowdfunding should be something that should be taken up by people. They should not be risk averse. They should go forward, take it to the next level, and you will find that you can really move to the next stage. And we have seen companies who have started with little or nothing, and today they have representations in Silicon Valley, right? And they have gone to Australia, they have broken markets there, and a lot of collaboration happening. So I think it's evolving. It's a matter of time before you see that happen.
I don't think we have much more time, but if we just see if there are any more questions from our audience. Yes.
Looking at the operational capacity, how much of it is just like labor arbitrage, and how much of it is like real, value creation that cannot be done back in home country?
Sorry, I didn't get it.
Like at city, they are doing something which means they are doing work here because it's cheaper to get lawyers or whatever resource you need. And so the labor arbitrage situation where people get people here. Is that the only very well?
No,
or do they?
I think it has evolved over time. Initially, it was a matter of labor, but now the customer has also evolved, the client has evolved. He's now looking at value addition. It's a matter of quality that's now in place, that's required, and you can see that happening now. If you look at transformation, lots of companies are doing really high-end work. I'll give you an example. Pearson Global is one of the largest publishing houses in the world. They run one of the, I think, the largest educational platform developers globally. The kind of team that they have close to 500 people currently. The turnover they make is close to $1.3 billion in terms of revenue for the group globally. So that's a substantial amount of skills and kind of work that's coming out of Sri Lanka. You take Virtusa has more or less moved to most of its high-end work into Sri Lanka, and most of the other, maybe the high volume and low value work is now sitting in different destinations. So you can see that transformation from high volume, low value to low volume and high value businesses coming in here. That's because customers do see that Sri Lanka has that potential and the kind of relationship that, we are able to create as a country, with the kind of skill sets that we have. So that transformation is happening. Labor arbitrage is still at a good level at this point of time, but with more players coming in, that could significantly change. But at this point of time, the customer does not care whether the work is done in Timbuktu or it's done in Colombo or it's done in Manila, as long as he gets the value for his work. And he's also becoming more and more demanding, in the sense that for every penny they pay, they're expecting 10 times more than what they did originally, right? So we have to be constantly moving forward and delivering those services that are very, very happy. Yeah?
Just actually a great one. There are product companies in the landscape, not just outsourcing.
Okay, I think we've done an interesting webinar and followed up with the open discussion as well. And I think Don has already said the Twitter handles most of these gentlemen. Of course, Harry, Young for Twitter, but the rest, you can connect with us via Twitter or Facebook, or you can follow us on there. And I think any follow-up questions we'll be very happy to answer as well. See, crowdfunding itself is still not a concept even in development. So I think we are being very careful in terms of Sri Lanka's legislation and regulations that before we do open it up, that we learn from the mistakes of others. And that is why I think the delay has been in terms of the regulators. Obviously, in constant dialogue with them to make sure that at some point this happens, because there's so much of potential in this country with our connections with very large diaspora in the world and obviously the skill sets that are available here. So I think we're very confident in the coming weeks and hopefully months, months and hopefully weeks, we will have this in place. But I think most important final thought before I let Don conclude is that when it's when the regulatory changes are in place, we are ready in terms of our product, the pitch, the success stories, how to grow, how to address ourselves, those are in place. One of the biggest challenges in the world has been that even when the crowdfunding platforms came in place, people didn't even have their stories. And therefore there was a delay. And I think we've stayed long enough in terms of delays. I think we need to get our product. And that's the whole purpose of starting this process. So our collaboration with the American Center will continue, and I think we have an event on the 7th of February as well. You will see the flyer go out. That's on entrepreneurship and innovation as well. And we have Dr. Hal who's coming down talking. I think there's a very interesting panel on that as well. Let's look at wider entrepreneurship and innovation in Sri Lanka. So we invite you to come to that. You'll get information on that on our website very shortly in the next day or two. And hope thank you so much for hosting all of us today.
Thank you, Imran, and thank you to our wonderful panel. I thank all of you for being here with us tonight, and those who are following online. I invite you to continue to follow the TechConnect series, as well as the other events that the American Center and the U.S. Embassy are sponsoring in relation to entrepreneurship, which is one of our high priorities, working with the people of Sri Lanka. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.